In the heart of San Francisco Bay, on that isolated rock known as Alcatraz Island, something extraordinary unfolded over nearly a decade that few people truly understood until years later. For more than 3 years after June 11, 1962, when Henry Lawson and his close friends, brothers Thomas and David Whitmore, disappeared from the federal prison there, authorities stuck firmly to one explanation. These 3 determined men had pulled off a daring breakout on their own, using handmade tools and a makeshift raft crafted from everyday materials, only to perish in the bay's icy, treacherous currents when their vessel gave way. Investigators combed the waters for remains, chased down countless tips, questioned dozens of possible contacts, and poured vast resources into piecing together the events of that fateful night. Yet, in all that effort, they were chasing shadows. They were probing the wrong angles, searching in the wrong directions, and overlooking the deeper truth about what really transpired inside those stark walls from the mid-1950s through the early 1960s. This wasn't simply a tale of 3 individuals breaking free through sheer ingenuity and luck. It was the story of one extraordinary person's calculated mastery in forging alliances and wielding subtle authority in a place designed to strip away every ounce of control. A man who instilled loyalty and admiration in an environment ruled by harshness and force, who turned the unthinkable into reality through approaches so understated that even the officers stationed right alongside the prisoners never fully grasped the web being woven around them. That individual was Vic Donovan, a figure whose path to Alcatraz, his rise to quiet dominance within its confines, and his potential role in orchestrating the prison's most iconic breakout had stayed shrouded in secrecy for years, safeguarded by unspoken pacts of loyalty that only the passage of time and the prison's eventual shutdown began to loosen. By early 1965, a dedicated investigative series had spoken with over a dozen ex-prisoners who had shared time with Donovan from 1954 to 1963. These were men who observed his methods up close, who saw the networks he nurtured, and who, with the facility long closed and Donovan no longer behind bars, felt ready to share their accounts. They wanted the authentic legacy preserved, free from the rumors and exaggerations that had clouded it for so long. What came through in those conversations was a vivid picture of a mind operating at an elite level amid the harshest restrictions possible. Donovan had a rare gift for converting vulnerability into strength, separation into solidarity, and confinement into a platform for growth. He recognized a truth that eluded both the administrators and many fellow prisoners. Genuine influence isn't born from aggression or coercion, but from sharp insight, mutual regard, and the steady building of connections that inspire voluntary support. Donovan stepped on Alcatraz on a chilly spring day in 1954, arriving from a Midwestern federal facility where he had been serving time for charges related to organized distribution of controlled substances. At nearly 50, he carried a reputation that preceded him in certain circles, a savvy operator who had overseen lucrative enterprises in a bustling eastern city. Rising from humble beginnings in a rural southern community to command respect in competitive underworld territories. But authorities had finally secured convictions that held, pinning him with interstate trafficking allegations that he maintained were engineered by overzealous agents frustrated by their inability to pin legitimate charges on him earlier. His move to Alcatraz followed incidents at the previous prison where he was deemed unmanageable, having continued to direct affairs from afar through clever communications and compromised staff. Officials believed the island's remoteness, surrounded by unforgiving waters, with rigorous oversight, restricted visits, and thoroughly reviewed correspondence, would sever those ties and compel him to simply endure his sentence. They thought isolating him completely would end it all, recalled Albert Jenkins, a 70-year-old former prisoner who spent years near Donovan's cell block and spoke from his quiet home in a Bay Area suburb in the spring of 1965. No easy access to the outside, constant watching. Everything controlled. They figured that would force him to back down. But they underestimated Vic. Challenges like that only sharpened his thinking, rather than shattering his resolve. The transfer presented Donovan with a fresh puzzle to solve, and he approached it with the patience and precision that defined him. In those initial days and weeks, Donovan adopted a low-profile stance familiar to him from past transitions into new settings. He observed intently, spoke sparingly, and absorbed the rhythms of daily life before making any moves. Eyewitnesses from that era described how he spent yard time strolling thoughtfully, sat quietly during meals, handled his laundry assignment diligently without drawing attention, and presented himself as someone committed to serving his time without disruption. "Most of us barely registered his arrival," said George Patterson, in his late 60s, who overlapped with Donovan for several years and shared recollections over coffee in 1965. He blended in, just an older gentleman, calm and courteous, no drama with the staff. What caught your eye eventually was his sharpness. You could sense he was absorbing everything, assessing the dynamics, spotting the weak points in the system. What Donovan took in during that adjustment period was a world governed by unrelenting severity and capricious enforcement. The officers of that time were known for their rigid, often brutal methods, applying punishments swiftly for the slightest infractions, with little regard for fairness or humanity. Physical reprimands, extended isolation, and deliberate degradations were tools to assert control, shielded by the island's detachment from public scrutiny. The staff acted with total authority, explained Samuel Brooks, 64, who endured similar years and later reflected on it calmly. A wrong glance could earn you a beating. Privileges vanished on whims, cells ransacked for sport, and because rotations were frequent, short stints before moving on, no real bonds formed. You couldn't appeal to reason or build any understanding. It was all about instilling dread to keep order. Faced with a structure reliant on force and resistant to ordinary persuasion, Donovan crafted an entirely different playbook, one rooted in consistency, dignity, and reciprocity. At its core was a principle both straightforward and demanding: extend authentic courtesy to everyone, from fellow prisoners to the uniformed personnel, and cultivate admiration through unwavering fairness, insight, and dependability. Vixie's way was the opposite of the usual tough guy posturing, Jenkins noted. Most try to dominate through strength or threats, breeding resentment that can turn deadly in close quarters. Vic built admiration instead, which draws willing cooperation. This manifested in layered ways. Toward the staff, Donovan maintained impeccable manners, addressing them properly, adhering strictly to regulations in view, avoiding any provocation. This wasn't subservience, it was calculated. Officers encountered less hostility from him, leading to fewer targeted harassments and occasional leniencies. Some even grew to value the rarity of an inmate who eased their daily burdens. He'd greet them warmly, inquire about their day, chat about current events or sports, Patterson recalled with a chuckle. Small gestures, but they humanized him. Soon he got slightly better assignments, access to reading materials others couldn't. Even the odd newspapers slipped his way. Those interactions opened doors no force could. With other prisoners, Donovan offered the same attentiveness, transcending backgrounds, offenses, or standing. He committed names and personal stories to memory, provided thoughtful counsel when sought, withheld judgment, and proved a reliable confidant. Vic was a true listener. Brooks said softly, "You could unload your worries, family troubles, legal headaches, tensions brewing, and he'd engage deeply, probe gently, recall details later. If aid was possible, he'd find a way to suggestion, a connection, an overlooked angle. Folks from all walks sought him out, and he assisted freely, no strings. His evident intellect further solidified his standing. An avid reader of history biographies, philosophy, and strategy texts, Donovan could converse profoundly on diverse subjects, enlightening those around him. He'd break down complex ideas simply, recommend titles that opened eyes, Jenkins remembered. Drawing from great leaders and thinkers, he'd show parallels to our situation, how patience and alliances trumped brute force. It elevated him. People valued his mind. No symbol captured Donovan's influence more vividly than the daily chess sessions in the yard. A skilled player honed over years, he turned a simple board into a hub of activity. From early afternoon into the later hours of recreation, challengers lined up, but the games served far broader purposes. Everyone knew that table as Vic's domain. Patterson described vividly. It'd play multiple opponents, often simultaneously, rarely losing. Spectators gathered not just for the matches but for the conversations. Disputes got aired quietly over moves, advice dispensed, updates shared. Staff viewed it as innocent pastime, oblivious to the real dealings. The setup was ingenious. Chess provided cover for sensitive talks, a neutral ground for approach, and a display of mental prowess that reinforced his authority without overt displays. One afternoon in the late 1950s, for instance, a heated rivalry between two groups threatened to erupt. Word reached Donovan during a game. As he contemplated a knight move against a younger challenger, two representatives settled up separately, whispering concerns under the guise of commenting on the board. Donovan listened, posed clarifying questions disguised as strategy tips, then suggested a compromise, mutual concessions on commissary trades and yard space. By game's end, tensions eased. The parties nodded agreement later that day, averting confrontation. Guards noticed nothing amiss. Another time, a newcomer struggling with isolation approached tentatively, requesting a match. Over several sessions, Donovan drew out the man's story, a fractured family back home, and connected him with others who'd navigated similar pains, fostering a support circle that steadied him through dark months. Despite the fortress, like barriers to external contact, Donovan sustained oversight of his affairs beyond the walls via intricate, undetectable channels. Coded correspondence formed the backbone letters to relatives and counsel that appeared mundane, health updates, family anecdotes, but embedded directives in familiar phrases known only to trusted recipients, masterful subtlety. His longtime lawyer, Philip Carter, described in a 1965 interview. A mention of hoping for better weather might signal adjustments in operations. Inquiries about a relative's garden could relay partnership decisions. Sensors scanned for overt signs but missed the layers. Visits, though rare and monitored through barriers, followed suit discussions of home matters that conveyed deeper instructions. Additionally, departing or transferring prisoners carried memorized verbal relays, chaining information across facilities without traces. These methods, painstakingly slow, proved effective. Donovan resolved conflicts, authorized moves, and oversaw ventures that thrived more robustly in his absence, his delegated teams rising to the occasion under his remote guidance. His structured days exemplified this discipline. Rising early with the wake-up signal, he prepared meticulously for inspection, joined mixed groups for meals that bridged divides, labored steadily in the laundry, observing, connecting, then devoted afternoons to reading, exercise walks, and those pivotal chess hours. Evenings brought more study tales of conquerors, statesmen, and organizers, yielding lessons he applied liberally. Vic treated every moment purposefully. Brooks reflected emotionally. While others faded into despair, he sharpened himself, viewing captivity as temporary adversity. That mindset drew people in. You wanted to align with someone so unbreakable. By the late 1950s, Donovan's network formed an unseen parallel authority, resolving issues, facilitating needs, commanding allegiance more reliably than official channels. Subtle signs abounded, deferential pauses in conversations upon his entry, crowds at his table, cleared paths during walks. Yet to overseers, he remained the compliant, unremarkable veteran, This framework reached its pinnacle in 1962 when Henry Lawson, a bright and resourceful prisoner with escape experience, along with the Whitmore brothers, veterans of prior attempts, sought Donovan's aid for their meticulously planned breakout. In early June, Lawson initiated contact subtly during yard time, proposing a game. Over the board, in hushed tones masked by peace movements, he outlined the scheme: vent accesses widened secretly over months, decoy figures prepared, raft assembled. But survival post-departure demanded external coordination, pickup, resources, evasion that only Donovan's reach could provide. Witnesses nearby sensed the gravity, Lawson's tension, Donovan's composure as he pondered. Days later, brief exchanges in corridors and walks followed, culminating in a yard stroll where Lawson queried readiness. Beyond the water. Donovan's affirming nod sealed it. That gesture represented extensive behind-the-scenes orchestration, contacts mobilized, contingencies funded, risks weighed. On the night of June 11, the trio executed flawlessly, decoys in place, through vents to roof, down walls, into the bay. Discovery came at dawn. By then, hours ahead. Donovan betrayed no hint amid the ensuing chaos, maintaining routine through interrogations with plausible denials. No remains surfaced despite searches, fueling inmate conviction. Donovan's arrangements ensured safe extraction and relocation. Whispers spread across prisons, elevating his legend, a man who conquered the unconquerable from within chains. Released in 1963 on good conduct, Donovan resumed his life quietly. The facility shuttered soon after. Years on, as tourists hear simplified tales of the impossible flight, those who knew reveal the fuller picture. One man's profound insight turned oppression into empowerment, proving respect and strategy can unlock even the tightest holds. In a later reflection, an ex-prisoner mused on a quiet evening game where Donovan, mid-match, paused to advise a despondent player. The board teaches patience. Force a piece, lose the game. Guide alliances wisely, and openings appear where none existed. Another scene unfolded during a rare library hour extension Donovan quietly secured for a group studying legal appeals. As pages turned, he shared anecdotes from historical figures who'd overcome sieges through cunning diplomacy, inspiring several to pursue overlooked avenues that later reduced sentences. During harsh winter lockdowns, when morale plummeted, Donovan organized informal story circles in cells, relaying tales of resilience that lifted spirits without violating rules. One memorable yard walk involved mediating a resource dispute, two factions vying for limited exercise equipment. Donovan suggested rotating schedules tied to mutual favors, like shared tool access for repairs, forging unexpected cooperation that lasted months. In the dining hall, he once diffused rising friction between newcomers and veterans by inviting both to his table, steering conversation to shared interests in sports news smuggled via approved channels, turning potential rivals into acquaintances. His reading habits inspired a small book exchange network, prisoners trading volumes with notes on strategic insights, subtly spreading his philosophy. During a facility-wide search that destroyed possessions, Donovan calmly rebuilt his sparse belongings while counseling others on mental fortitude, drawing from accounts of leaders enduring captivity. A younger inmate, facing transfer and fearing isolation, received Donovan's quiet assurance during chess, memorized contacts outside who could ease the transition, delivered flawlessly later. These moments, woven through years, illustrated his empire's depth, not dominion through fear, but elevation through uplift. Even in solitary stints others endured punitively. Whispers credited Donovan's prior words for sustaining them. Post-escape rumors swirled, but Donovan's silence preserved the mystique, allowing belief in his role to amplify influence without risk. In 1965 inquiries, his representative firmly denied involvement, attributing tales to folklore. Yet those present knew three men reached freedom because a masterful strategist, from shadows, cleared the path.